Today, let's talk about Japada. Now, this is an ongoing conversation, and every other day, there's one video or another talking about, returning home with stories ranging from, okay, shit happens to borderline scary. I also receive emails a lot of times showing concerns or expressing concerns on what life is like living in Germany, probably after studies or when you relocate, just general life in Germany, as well as on my videos. There are lots of comments different times with people, a lot of people on the video saying, oh, I have gone back home, or they're going back home and they can't take it anymore. And all of these are with reasons ranging from topics on depression, struggling with the language, the weather, shocking cultural differences, of course, the biggest part, which is racism. I don't think there's any way to talk about this whole topic without including racism as part of it, especially if you are a black person, I would say, or a person of color generally. I don't know. Guys, tell me, what do you prefer? Do you prefer saying a black person or person of color? I know sometimes this is a conversation that keeps going on. Some people are like, person of color is not a right term. Meanwhile, other people are like, person of color is a broader term. It covers not just black people, but also brown people, and things like that. Some other persons are like, no, black is it's better. Huh. Black is better. And some other people are like, I just don't identify as any, just call me by my name, Ogina, or something. But anyway, that's a digression from the topic at hand. Let's talk about Japada. First of all, let me explain what the term Japada means, because I've been told a couple of times now that not always, but sometimes I forget to, explain what certain terms are that I might use, which may not be familiar to non-Nigerians. So in simple terms, Japada means to return. Of course, this is a reverse of another term, which is to Japa, which is used in Nigeria as to refer to the phenomenon, which one is right? Phenomenon of, relocating, of moving out of the country, to other countries. So in this case, Japada would then be you've relocated and now you are, relocating back to your country. It doesn't. I don't think it includes those who were, say, born abroad and then they are, in quotes, finding their roots, going back to the motherland. That's not Japada, at least by my own understanding. Except I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, guys, please let me know in the comment section. But what Japada refers to generally is returning to your country after you have relocated. Now, what are the stories that some people have, or a lot of the stories that have been going on around now concerning this conversation on the whole Japada movement? You see several videos going up with several headlines, the country was not good for me, I'd rather go back than die here, several video titles. Now, whatever the stories may be, there's a common theme tying every one of these stories together, is the general unhappiness, or lack of fulfillment, or not finding what you thought you were going to find, and things like that. This is the general theme that ties all of this. Then you also have some people who are, on the extreme, that only talk about the extreme part of these whole experiences. Either you hear people who talk about people living abroad are suffering. Forget about all these things, they are suffering. They are, they are living in Nigeria, you're living much better than a lot of people living abroad. People are living hand to mouth. People are working like multiple shifts, multiple jobs to keep body and soul together. There are lots of narratives, lots of stories, lots of concerns, lots of unhappiness, So all of this is the common theme that you will find in a lot of these videos. And so let's address some of these issues. Now, if you're considering location and you have some concerns, there are some things I think you should bear in mind. First, let's get one thing straight. Not everyone who relocates to a new country will thrive in that country. The story will never be the same for Mr. A, Mr. B, and Mr. C. Sometimes they're going to be different, sometimes they're going to be similar, but never necessarily the same. Not everyone will thrive. Some people will return. Some people will also return not because they are struggling or because they couldn't, find their feet or because they're unhappy. They are returning because that was part of the plan. That was the initial plan, to first move, do this and that, learn or get some training or get some exposure or just explore adventure, whatever. And then they go back. This had always been the plan, and returning back to the country is just another step in their own grand plan. So let's get that part. Let's just know that is a possibility, because people relocate for several reasons. Because sometimes it feels like now we're almost generalizing relocation. Like when we talk about people relocating, moving to another country, it feels like everyone is being put in the same box. But people don't really, everyone is not relocating for the same reason. And the reason why you are relocating and how you are relocating and when you are relocating would influence your overall experience to a large extent, I think. So first, we need to understand that not everyone is relocating in the same way. Some people are relocating via studies. Some people are relocating via work. But some people are relocating, to meet a family member with family reunion visas. Some people are relocating, as au pair people, or an au pair person rather. Some people are relocating to do volunteer work, to learn the language, to as asylum seekers. With these different ways or pathways, your experiences are largely going to be different. For example, someone who relocates to work is not going to struggle as much, as such, unlike, let's say, the other groups of people, because you're already, let's say, settled in some sense, which in this case is the financial aspect, because you have a job already and you move into the country, you are already working. So the burden of thinking about what to do, how to generate income for yourself is already off your head. So you're focusing more on other things, probably integration, settling down, several other aspects of your life. So the experience is largely, different. Unlike someone who comes to study, that person is, needing to settle in, deal with school things, try to start planning about work, because at the end of the day, everything that we're doing is to make money for ourselves, take care of our bills. Whether you're living in Nigeria, living abroad, living wherever, whatever it is that we're doing in this life, all that we're doing is to make money to survive. So as a student as well, the next thing they're worrying about is, okay, what's the next thing after school? What's the next plan? For those who intend to stay, at least those who intend to go back already know they're going back probably to get a job back home or whatever. So you see, the experience is going to be slightly different from the person who is already working, whose troubles are a completely different trouble. The guy who comes in as an asylum seeker is going to be experiencing a completely different story entirely. They're going to be telling you different things. These guys are probably in some camps, they have been taken care of by the government, one thing, one way or another. To be honest, I really don't know how the asylum thing works, because sometimes some people send me emails to ask how to go about asylum. I don't know how it works, to be honest. I'm not very familiar with it, but that's a completely different experience, because when you meet people who come to the country as asylum seekers, their interaction is very different from, people who come through other means. Same thing with the au pair person. It's a completely different experience, because these guys are coming to live with a family, to help them take care of the kids usually, and then they get some stipends and all of that. The experience is different. It's a completely different experience. Same as the person who came in as an house building, came in to do house building. It's a slightly different experience. Even though they're studying, they're also earning an income. So it's a slightly different experience for them as well. So the point I'm trying to make with this point is that the different ways that you relocate into the country would largely influence your experience. It's not the totality of it, but to a large extent, because it will also impact sometimes even the kind of people that you're even interacting with. Do you understand? So that's something that we should bear in mind. That's the reason why when people send me a message to say, I want to move to Germany, how do I move to Germany? I'm like, no, that's not the way to approach relocation. You need to know why you are relocating, what you are relocating for and how you intend to, go about it. It shouldn't be a thing of, I just want to relocate. What is the best part? Or I want to relocate. I need to relocate. I really, really need to relocate, and I want to relocate by whatever means, and then whatever means works, then we go with it. Usually, I will advise that you first decide why you are relocating, what you want to do when you get there, and then begin to navigate how to go about that. Sometimes bear in mind what you have, what you're qualified for, because sometimes some people, in the bid to know, just let's just relocate, go for options that they probably would not go for if they had thought about it a little bit more. They have planned a little bit more. Because, for example, I was watching a video one time and someone was talking about he was creating awareness against people who, relocate illegally in some sense, like go through the desert, go through all of these dangerous paths to get to other parts of the world, And there's something he said that made a lot of sense. That sometimes some of these people who take this route, they don't even know that they could have done something else. They could have probably gone to study. The same money they spent doing all of this, they could have spent it on studying. They could have spent it to maybe put together their documents and all of that for an house building, or spend the money. So there are different ways that they could have come that could have saved them a lot of troubles. So, in thinking about what you want to do and how you want to go about it, that's why it's good to ask questions. You can watch a lot. There are so many videos now on, moving abroad or moving to different countries for whatever reasons. We need to be patient to check, for these information, filter them, and think critically on what we want to do, so that we're not just like, I just want to just relocate, I just want to just relocate. So I've talked on this point for so long, but you get the point. How you relocate, when you relocate is a factor. Even in speaking of when, how old you are can also impact how what your experience is going to be like. Because a younger person can take more risks, than an older person. A Let's say 20 something year old, 20s, early 30s, they can take more risks. If you're much older, it's a bit more difficult to take certain risks because you have much more responsibilities, most likely. So if you have more responsibilities, you are you're a bit more rigid in the way you tend to experience the life around you. So I would say that for younger people, a lot of times when people reach out to me and talk about, oh, my child wants to do a master's here or a bachelor's here, or whatever, or my husband wants to do this or my wife wants to do that, I usually say the younger you are, the more risks you can take, the more opportunities you can try to explore. If this doesn't work, you can easily pivot, and try something else. Of course, I've talked about planning and being sure of what you want to do, but yes, sometimes despite the plan that you make, it probably doesn't work. You can then easily pivot. But if you are much older, pivoting might be a little bit more difficult for you because probably you have family, probably of course you have more responsibility. You seem to be under a lot more pressure to settle down, which would mean that every little thing might just, get on your nerves. If any small thing that maybe didn't work a certain way, you might really feel much more uncomfortable about it, unlike other people, or like a younger person who may not necessarily feel that much pressure. So the time that you relocate is can be a factor to what you experience. And again, the older you are, the less BS you can take. You remember we talked about that in some previous video. The older you are, the less BS you can take. So you are less patient with people generally. Okay. Now another thing a lot of us struggle with, especially when you listen to a lot of the videos that talk about Japada and relocating back to Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, Uganda, wherever, is the struggle to integrate with the culture of the place that you're in and all of that. The struggle might be different depending on the country, So let's say in the UK, for example, because there's no language barrier, the integration process would most likely be a lot easier than for European countries where English is not the language of the country. It's not the official language of the country. Now I'm using someone who is moving from Nigeria, for example, so I don't sound like an ignorant person, because there's some people that English, there's some other countries in Nigeria where it's in Nigeria, in Africa rather, where English, or other parts of the world for that matter, where English is not their first language. But I'm using Nigeria as a case study, Nigerian rather, as a case study. So for a Nigerian whose integration journey we're talking about in this case, it will be much more easier for the person to integrate in an English speaking country than a non-English speaking country, because the learning curve is a lot more steep for a non-English speaking country. You need to learn the language, you need to understand a bit of the culture, and all of that. So the learning curve is a bit more steep. If it's an English speaking country, it's a lot more easier because, of course, language barrier is already gone. Culture might be similar, might be different, but once the language is at least clear, at least you can even understand what they're saying clearly. It's easier to catch up on that culture, even if the culture is completely different. So someone going to the UK, to Canada, to America, the integration is slightly going to be different. Maybe the struggle for integration will probably be something else entirely, that's not largely tied to language. But a lot of time, language is a large part, or a huge part of or a huge part rather a huge part of integration. Another thing that influences this integration is also the personality of the person who we're talking about in this case. Someone who is very outgoing, someone who is, an extroverted person, would naturally, get to meet people much more easier, make more friends easier, go out more. So the integration curve for that person is also a lot less steep, unlike someone who is much more introverted, who is afraid to talk to people, who doesn't really like to go out a lot, who their social battery or social energy is not as much. So personalities also would impact this. That's why whatever we do, we need to make conscious decisions. I talk a lot about making friends, building communities. These are conscious efforts that you have to make. So whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, especially when you're introverted, since you know that you're introverted, you know that, okay, this is something that you need to put extra work on. And then it's now be to, make plans to navigate this. So personalities would always impact how we interact, or how we're able to, settle in, how we're able to navigate, integrate, and begin to make friends, begin to build community. Because making friends, community, integration is one of the things that once you're able to overcome that, then certain other problems can easily be navigated, like the issue of loneliness, so it would already be taken care of. The issue of depression. Well, depression, even though it comes in different shapes and forms depending on what's going on in your life at the time. Maybe you might even have, because there are people who are very extroverted, who are very lively, who are having lots of fun. They look like they're having lots of fun, but they're going through a lot of depression. But at least if you're a much more outgoing person, I believe there's the chances of being of struggling with this is a lot less than for someone who is much more introverted. They are more introspective, think a lot about things, internalize a lot of things, and sticking to themselves. So personalities, that's why no story should be taken just as a general rule of thumb that this applies generally. No, people are having different kinds of experiences abroad based on different variables. Now, one of the best ways to give yourself a fighting chance, when you're relocating, when you're moving abroad, is plan, plan, plan. Like, this cannot even be overemphasized. Plan, 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 plan. You might look or sound like a crazy person, but ask questions before you even start the whole journey. Once you say, okay, this is what I want to do now, applying to relocate, begin to plan. What do I need to do? What are the things that needs to get done, and do them early? What are my chances of getting a job? What are my chances of settling in this particular place, and how do I navigate that? And once you have been able to answer these questions for yourself, once you arrive the country, is to hit the ground running. Hit the ground running in getting information. Now I always say that the people who you meet first, they play a big role in how sometimes even how you perceive the country at large. Meet people who try to meet people, because it's easy to just say meet people. This is easier said than done. But try to put yourself in positions or places where you meet people who are much more sound. So if you're a professional person, try to connect yourself to professional groups, professional networks, so that you're getting proper information. Information is power. Anywhere that you are in the world, whether you are in your country or abroad, but even much more so when you're abroad, it is powerful, because it is what you know that will take you, that will take you the distance that you need to go. The people of course, are now going to be most likely the people that are going to connect you to this information, to what you're going to be knowing. The people that you meet, if they are pessimistic people, if they are the people that are always saying, "Oh, Nigerians don't do this, Nigerians don't do that," we are not able to do this because you're a black person, and this, or always complaining about one thing or another, you're going to somehow begin to absorb that pessimistic mindset concerning the country that you live in. You're somehow going to, swallow that and regurgitate it to some other person, or regurgitate it even in your mind to the point where it becomes your reality. They begin to see everything as, "Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm not able to do this, I'm not qualified to do that." So the people that you meet first, super, 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 super important. Do your possible best to connect with those who are going to be putting you on the right path. Create a balance. Create a balance in the network that you put together for yourself. We also see a lot of videos of people talking about, "Oh, Nigerians or Africans are suffering abroad. Africans are going through a lot. They're on the streets. They are holding 10 jobs. They have no time for themselves." Yeah, I think all of this depends on the place that you're in, depends on the country that you're in, depends, especially for the job thing. It depends on the country that you're in, the kind of system that works there, and depends on what you do as well. So first of all, we need to take that rubbish mindset that Africans are suffering abroad. It's a lie. Well, yes, people are suffering, and not just Africans, all over the world. Even the locals of that country, some people are also suffering, because bad times fall on different people at different times in their lives. It doesn't mean that because they're Africans is the reason why they are suffering. No, we have lots of other Africans who are thriving. In fact, we have much more Africans who are thriving in the countries that they have decided to relocate to. So it is a wrong narrative. People who talk about, Africans are. In fact, I saw a WhatsApp, sorry, an Instagram video some days ago, and this guy was talking about how that he was in Italy, I think, and that the whole streets were filled with Africans who are suffering on the road. They are begging. That might be true. That yes, you saw a lot of people who are suffering, but it's also true that there are a lot of other people who are doing well, who are thriving, who are, making their mark in that country. So let's not just only sell the narrative of those who are not. Let's also remember that there are those who are actually doing well, that the plans that they had for themselves when they moved to the country is working out for them already. So that I wanted to just mention. Then next is the topic of having multiple jobs. I've been working now in Germany for over 3 years at least, almost, over 3 years, or almost 4 years now, in Germany. And I've never had multiple jobs at the same time. Well, I do multiple stuff here, but I do those multiple things on my own terms because I choose to do them, not because I have to do them. For example, I have a full-time job. I have this YouTube channel. I have some other small things I do, like maybe volunteering for different things. And these are not because I have to do these things to survive. It's because I choose to do them. So people, of course, have single jobs and they survive. It depends on the kind of job that you're doing, the profession that you find yourself in, and all of that. So, for example, someone who's working in an office in 9 to 5, let's say an IT professional or a teacher or social worker or something, someone who is working in the corporate world, a regular job, would most likely not need to have multiple jobs, you know. However, someone who is maybe not earning as much, maybe the job that they're doing is not enough for them to take care of their everyday needs, or for the bills they need to take care of, because these bills come every month. They don't care. They don't care. The bills are going to be coming whether you are ready or not. Ready or not, here I come. That's what they're going to do. So you find that some people who are not able to, you know, get proper jobs, or professional jobs. Now, when I say proper jobs and professional jobs, like, I don't want to sound classist in that sense, because people also have some other kind of jobs that are not, I will not say professional in the sense that we call professional, like blue collar jobs people. You have people who are blue collar jobs, job workers, who also don't need to have multiple jobs. They are still able to take care of their needs. And also, it depends on what you're doing, the kind of work that you're doing, the kind of situation that you find yourself in. So, no, it's not true that everyone needs to, work multiple jobs. They need to take uncountable hours. And no, I find that this story is very common in places like the UK. I've never lived in the UK, so I don't really know. I can't really tell you for a fact that this is the reality. However, I also know a few persons who live in the UK who don't have multiple jobs, who have just a single job, and they're able to take care of all their needs without, breaking their backs by taking multiple hours. So I would say this depends on what you're doing, what your situation is generally in life, and maybe what your plans are for yourself. So the idea that you have to do that, I just wanted to debunk that. Please, let's get that out of our minds. Now, I talked about hitting the ground running. Hitting the ground running, like I said previously, is, you already have a plan. You hit the ground, you start running with that plan already. If you're in a country, for example, like in Germany, where English is not the language, and if English is your own first language, then learning the language is the next quick step that you can already do in terms of hitting the ground running. Now, when we don't do that, there are certain struggles that we're going to certain things that we're going to encounter as struggles, either in terms of looking for a job, and or integration, like we have said previously. This can then become a burden at some point, making life generally, just difficult and maybe unbearable to the point where one wants to go back. Then another thing is being able to consider that the other person who you're interacting with is also new to you as a person, So a lot of times people complain that, oh, in the office, this one happens, that one happens, cultural differences. Now we need to be open to understanding the new culture that we have gotten into and learn to adapt to that culture. Something that I find a lot of times is that for a lot of us, we relocate and we want the people to adapt to our culture. That's not the way it should work. We should think about it just the same way we would imagine that someone comes to our own country and wants us to behave like them. No. This is my honest opinion, to be honest. Some other people might not agree with that. So if you are in Germany, for example, don't expect the Germans to behave like Nigerians, because we are completely different. And for God's sake, you are in Germany. So expect the Germans to behave like the Germans, and don't expect that they're going to change their behavior just because of you. Of course, it makes sense that people are, accommodating of other people. Yes, but understand that this is a way of life for people here, and try to learn and understand that way of life, so that not everything that is done is being perceived as, antagonistic, or is being perceived as someone being racially discriminatory towards you. For example, Germans, maybe at office, are very work oriented. They're like work, 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 work. So a lot of times they are they have the perfectionism tendencies. At least for a lot of Germans that I have worked with, they have a tendency to be perfectionist. They are very, very detailed generally. Now, when they show this attribute of being very detailed. Let's say, for example, work needs to get done and they do it in a particular way, and they expect that, okay, everyone should do it in a particular, except this person is just being borderline unreasonable. If it's in terms of actually getting quality work done the way it should be done, based on company standards and all, I think we should be more accommodating of this kind of behavior. Doesn't mean that we Nigerians don't have perfectionist tendencies. That's not true. We are fantastic at what we do. We have great people with great minds doing great work, but we are more accommodating when it comes to our social interactions. We tend to be much more flexible or much more lenient. We're not as blunt. So, for example, the same message I'm going to be passing to say, oh, there's a slight error here, I might not say it as bluntly as a German is going to say, this is an error, correct it. But this is where these guys work and function. So we need to think about it, okay, and try to make that adjustment mentally. In my mind, this is where I see it. Make that adjustment mentally so that we're not seeing everything as someone just ganging up against you, except in the case where you can see based on every form of interaction that this person is just ganging up against you just for the sake of, because that also happens. We cannot deny that. That also happens. You see, when this person relates also with other colleagues of same nationality or of different nationality from yours, you can see how they also relate. If the interaction is completely different, then you can begin to question, okay, is this person treating me this way just because? Or is this really just is this really just me not seeing the picture because I'm in the frame? They say you don't see the whole picture because you're in the frame. So let's think about all of these things in this aspect. Oh my God, I've gone on and on and on concerning this particular point. Another reason I see that a lot of people are under a lot of pressure is following the crowd. I'd always say that we should not follow the crowd. Your journey is completely different. Your path is completely different. So when I mean following the crowd is in this sense is, much more comparing yourself with other people and seeing the path that they are on or how far they have gone. Oh, this person has gotten a car already. Or this person has gotten a house already, has gotten a job already, and I've not done that. Oh, and then you're so nervous. You're just, putting yourself under a lot of pressure. I made a post one time. I talked about how that some people are going to be fast. Some people are it's going to look like these guys are just, they are super fast. They are getting everything done. They are having their lives together. And it seems like you're just, lagging behind. Everyone has their different timing. And you'll be amazed when you talk to so many other people, when you have a larger sample to deal with, you find that, no, you're not really behind. You're not really late like that. There's so many people who are probably doing worse off than you. Doesn't mean that we should compare ourselves to the worst. It just means that you should give yourself a bit more grace, and understand that you're not on the same path. You might not finish your studies as quickly as some of your colleagues. You might not, get that job as quickly as some of your colleagues. You might not, buy the house, get that car, do whatever as quickly as some of your other colleagues. But understand that you're on different paths. Focus on your path and work on that, and not be distracted by the progress that other people are making. Because when you're always there comparison that, like they say, is the thief of joy. It will take your joy away from you. And before you know it, you're wondering, what am I even doing here? Why am I here? Why am I was doing this, I was this back home, I do this back home, I do that back home. And now I'm here and I'm doing this, that, and the other. While it is good that we compare, I'm not comparing in this case. It's good that we take stock of our lives, take stock of how far we have come, what progress we are making, and all that. The core point I'm trying to pull out of this point is to say that while we are taking stock of our life, we should remember that we are taking stock of our own life. We're not taking stock of another person's life. As long as we are making progress, we are making constant progress. We are sure that we are moving to the point that we hope to, get to. Another thing is too much focus on race and skin color. I mentioned this slightly when I talked about us being much more open to other people and all. Let's not dwell too much. If you're dwelling too much, oh, it's because I'm black, that's why this is happening. It's because I'm black, that's why this is happening. Unnecessary pressure. And sometimes some people think about the fact that, oh, because of your skin color there's certain opportunities that you cannot get. No, that's not true. I always say that everything is up for the taking. Everything is up for the taking. It's what are you willing to do, how much work are you willing to put in, to be able to do that which is necessary. Don't see your skin color as a disadvantage, because once we continue to talk about it, we say, oh, that's how they do. Because we've talked about a lot of videos where people say black people are not, black people don't do this. And black people, there's a video I did on TikTok one time, and the person was talking about how that Europe is not for black people. They just want to use you, and they just want to. So when you have such kind of mindset, you've already defeated yourself even before the fight starts. So your skin color, your race, and whatever should not be what you think limits you. That's the reason why, even when you're getting advice from people who tell you just find a job that keeps you going, like a survival job, remember that surviving is not the goal, thriving is the goal. So survival jobs can quickly become a trap. It can become a trap. And there are a lot of people who really do believe that as Africans, as Nigerians, as Ghanaians, or as a person of color, that's all that we're good for. That's all that we can do. Meanwhile, that's not the case. There are lots of Nigerians, Africans, all over the country, all over Germany, Europe, the Americas, all over the world, really, who are doing amazing stuff, who are, taking the rooms that they go into, and they are thriving there. See yourself in these people. See yourself in these people who are doing well in their own field, and don't be limited to the current situation that you're in, which is that, okay, certain things are not working at the moment. So while I do understand that survival jobs have their own place, because sometimes it just happens, you just have to do what you have to do to put food on your table. There's dignity in labor. But the important thing is to remember not to be comfortable, so that you can easily already begin to transition. Once we get comfortable, then it gets more and more difficult to break out of that cycle. And after a while, you begin to say, what am I even doing with my life? Is this what I came here to do? My mates are doing this. Back home, I was doing that. And this is what I think anyway, around the topic of thriving as opposed to just survival. Next point is not to live apologetically, because a lot of times, just like we have said, like the previous point talked about being focused on race and color, living apologetically, like, oh, I don't deserve to be here, or, oh, please just manage me as I am. Even that kind of lifestyle or mindset will make you shrink yourself wherever you find yourself. Even when you're having conversations with people, you shrink. When you're having conversation, even with your peers, you shrink. Don't live apologetically, live bold, live, take charge of the place. I don't know, I've somehow made this point like in 10 or 15 different ways already. The fact that you moved out of the country, it does not make you less of an advantaged person, because, by the way, it was not easy moving in the first place. First of all, you're not even poor. That you moved is a lot of money. It costs you a lot of money to relocate. So that's something. First of all, it costs you a lot of mind work, it costs you a lot of mental gymnastics to shift your mind from home down here. So you've won a lot of battles already. So don't live like like you are just grateful to be here. No, we need to be more than, we need to move beyond that. Oh, thank God I've moved. Thank God. We need to move beyond that thank God phase and move into taking charge and living unapologetically, and going in a room and speaking up your mind as like you would speak where you feel like you are more settled in or more comfortable in. Live unapologetically. Now, despite all of this, despite making plans, making the right moves, making the right connection, building the right community, taking steps at the right time, at the, because sometimes some opportunities are just right timing and right placement. Despite all of this, some people will still go back, and it's okay. Some people will go back because they plan to go, but maybe they've been here for a bit and they're like, I just want to go back home, no matter what, no matter where I am, home is still home. I'll still be much most comfortable back home than I would be here, and all of that. That there are going to be people who are going to be like that, and it's very, very okay. People should not feel bad about doing that, and people should not be shamed for doing that. However, you should also shame others who choose not to go back. People who don't want to go back, who still want to stay in the countries they're in because they're okay there, they feel they're happy there, they feel they're doing much better there. There shouldn't be a superiority in decision. I shouldn't feel like my decision is superior to yours because I want to go back. I love my country better than you who choose not to go back. So nobody loves the country, country anymore. At the end of the day, we are all just trying to survive. We're not just survive but thrive. We're all trying to live our best lives as much as we can. So if those that are going to go back home, it's okay. Some people really cannot just take it anymore, and they have to, go back to the place, to the environment that they're familiar with, to the cultures that they're familiar with, you know, and all that. Sometimes people complain about the fact that, oh, we're here, oh, there are no jobs, I couldn't get a job, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. Look, the problems, I feel that a lot of these problems are universal. Even if you're in Nigeria, if you will still apply for jobs. You will still scout for these jobs. It's not like there are going to be jobs just sitting down waiting for you to come and pick it. Except you're a nepo baby, then maybe your story is completely different. Whatever part of the world that you're in, you're still going to have to put in effort. You're going to have to make plans. You're going to have to work on your goals, on plan big plans, and make applications. Put yourself out there. Make yourself visible, take charge of spaces and all of that. This is going to be applicable wherever it is that you're in anyway. However, if you've chosen to go back home, this is why I would always say that we should keep relationships, because some people relocate and then they just cut off everyone who is back home. We need to keep relationships, maintain certain connections, because if for whatever reason you decide to go back home, or if for whatever reason you have to go back home, because there's one thing that you decide, there's another thing that you were like you didn't have a choice, you had to just go, you have to just relocate. Those network that you have maintained, these are going to be your first point of call. Imagine you've cut off everybody, you're not keeping in touch with old friends, and things like that, old colleagues, all completely gone. Then you are probably going to be starting from scratch again. We understand that some people cut interactions for different reasons, maybe for their own sanity or for whatever, but we should find a balance somehow, because we don't know where the wind of life can blow, and if it comes to the point where we have to go back, there has to be something, you have to be able to start off somewhere. It should not be a situation whereby you just go back home and you're starting from scratch. Or for example, with selling properties, I hear a lot of people sell their properties just to relocate. I personally am not in support of that, because just like we've said, some people are going to go back home, and if you have to go back home, now you are almost starting from scratch. When it happens that you've sold all that you had back home to move to this new country that you're not quite sure that is going to work out yet. I'm honestly very wary about selling off all your properties because you need the money to relocate. Except you're selling for a different reason, maybe for, I don't know, for whatever kind of reason that you have for selling that property. Okay. But if selling the property, the only reason why you're selling the property is so you can raise money to be able to relocate, I personally don't subscribe to that. I don't know, maybe find some other way, maybe maybe take a little bit longer instead of relocating immediately, maybe take maybe 1 or 2 years more to be able to pull funds together, or maybe take a loan instead, and pay in bits, as opposed to losing a very good property only to end up returning back to the country and then going to rent an apartment, starting afresh and all that. This might not be sound advice financially. I don't know. This is just maybe my own sentiments, I think, around this. But the most important thing is to keep relationships so that if it happens that you have to go back home, you have somewhere to start from. So you're not starting from scratch. You're not just coming back and, lost. Because if that happens, it's going to be another cycle again of the same struggle that you had abroad of struggling to do. It's just going to be that now you're struggling to do for a job, struggling to do this, struggling to do that, struggling to do this, that, and the other. Now, to just wrap all of this up and bring it to a close, while Japada is a huge phenomenon now that's going on and the commission is huge, it's not something that should be either frowned upon or over exaggerated in the sense of the reasons or why people are doing this. When we are telling the stories, let's tell the stories holistically, a much more complete story. Let's not be the people who will just tell a lie just because we want to. But it might not be a lie to you, to be honest. Maybe you think you thought about it and to you it really did make sense. However, Japada is a thing that's going to happen. People are going to come, people are going to relocate, people are going to relocate back, people are going to go back home. This is going to be happening, and this happens everywhere. It's not just happening just with Nigerians or Africans, or people from third world countries. It's happening everywhere. People relocate from America to Germany and relocate back to America. This happens everywhere. People relocate even within the country. People will move to Lagos and then to Abuja, and then maybe it doesn't work, they like relocate, and then they go back to another. These things are going to be happening all the time. Immigration, everything is going to be happening. It's not something that's going to be eliminated. But at the end of the day, we need to ensure that the right things we are doing, we are thinking about it holistically, we are making plans clearly, and that we are putting our best foot forward. We are looking at things from multiple sides and not just having just a one-sided, narrow view on issues. And when we talk about things to people, especially sharing opinions on experiences, let's try to be much more balanced in how we share these experiences. There are good experiences, there are bad experiences. There's no use in emphasizing largely on the bad experience and forgetting to share some great experiences as well. Anyway, that brings me to the end of this video. Until next time, do have a fantastic day. Bye.